Alright guys, thanks for tuning in today. This is Argon Live Channel 5 and I'm Joni. I'm a physical therapist assistant. I've been doing this job for about 14 years now. Most of my experience has been in the civilian sector, but I've also worked in the military and at Argon for 5 years now. We're going to talk about the hip today and things you can do to make your hips stay healthy and strong. So this month, the Healthy Habit Challenge is basically stretching your hips. There's 5 stretches I'm going to show you today. All you have to do is click yes on the Virgin Pulse app and do that 10 times out of 30 days and you'll get 500 points. Also, by taking this class, you'll earn 1,000 points by taking the test at the end and passing the course. So why do we get hip pain? One of the reasons why we get hip pain is because we have joint instability or maybe we have joint weakness. So today I'm going to show you ways that you can keep your joint healthy and strong. So when you're thinking about your hips, one thing you want to do is make sure that you stretch your hips every day, especially prior to exercise. So if you're going to go on a long walk, make sure you stretch your hips. That way you can keep those muscles nice and warm before that walk. There's a lot of ways to stretch your hips and your legs in general, so pick whatever is the easiest way for you to stretch your muscles. You can also do your hip exercises at your kitchen sink, so today we'll talk about doing that. And I also want you guys to know that there's sometimes issues with the low back that causes pain into the legs or into the hips. Sometimes people will come to physical therapy and say, hey, my hip hurts a lot. And then when we check it out, it's actually coming from the low back. Also be aware of your hip posture. We'll talk about ways you can sit to avoid throwing your hips off a little bit. And then we're going to talk about ways you can improve your balance. But just before we begin, I want to thank you so much for all your support you've given me in these classes. I know a lot of you guys have learned a lot of stuff. And I hope that if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me and I can answer the questions that you have to the best of my ability. So just to get started, the hip is very much like the hip and the shoulder are very much like the same kind of joint. So you have a ball and socket joint and on the hip, and then you also have a ball and socket joint on the shoulder. The thing with these guys is that they need a lot of joint stability because they move around so much. So your shoulder can move up and it can move out to the side, can move back and in. The hip can also move a lot. So where you have a joint that moves a lot, you need a lot of joint stability and a lot of joint flexibility. If you look at the picture, you'll see that the hip is kind of like a golf ball on a tee. And sometimes people don't understand what I mean by that. But essentially, that golf ball has to stay on the tee perfectly before you hit that nice shot. If it's all over the place, you're not going to be able to hit that ball. So when you think about the hip, you want to think about basically pristine muscle strength around that joint to keep it nice and stable. Alright, so some of the most common conditions that we see in physical therapy are sprains, strains, arthritis, bursitis, and low back conditions. So we're going to go through those now. So essentially, whenever someone hurts their hip, whenever it's a sprain, they're pulling the ligaments that come into this area here. That takes a long time to heal because those ligaments don't get the same blood supply that a muscle would get. So if you're running really fast and you pull a muscle, you're going to heal faster from that than you would if you were pulling a ligament in your hip. So the other thing that happens that you always hear about is people maybe pulling their hamstring or their quad. And in the picture that you see in front of you, there's a guy standing, this is the back of his leg. So the hamstring comes from the back here, the back of the hip, and it goes all the way down to the knee. Sometimes people will pull that muscle, and then that muscle gets to be really, really tight and bound. And so that's what people are feeling whenever they feel a strained muscle. And then the other thing that happens too is arthritis. So arthritis is essentially a wear and tear of the wear and tear of the cartilage around the bone. When that starts to get jaggedy like you see in that center picture, that can cause a lot of pain. So if you stay strong and flexible and keep that little ball right in its socket, the chances of you getting arthritis are a lot less. However, if you have a lot of pain and that bone isn't gliding the right way, you'll start to wear away at that tissue. And that can lead to hip replacements as you see in that picture all the way to your right. The other thing that we see is something called bursitis. So people will say, I have hip bursitis. And there's a few different bursa, is what we call them in the hip. And those basically just protect between the bone and the muscle, kind of giving it like a little bit of a cushion. Whenever it starts to get inflamed, it gets a little bit puffy and then it causes more pain. And the other thing that we see too is sciatica. So I forgot to mention that this guy, his little name is Baby Argon. And as you can see here in this area, you don't really have much support, so you don't really have much muscle to help you. Sometimes people will get a little bit of instability in here, and then they'll get a pinching of a nerve, and then that nerve will cause pain that goes into maybe the thigh, the knee, and maybe into the foot. And so what happens is if you don't have good stability in the low back, you might start to feel hip pain, and you think it's hip pain, but it's really actually low back instability. Anyway, so sometimes whenever you feel pain, say into your arm or maybe into your foot, it's not necessarily pain that's coming from your foot or from your hand, it's coming from your low back. So it's just something that you should be aware of. One of the things I want to tell you about is when you sit down, always try to sit nice and square in your chair, because if you don't, you end up throwing those hips out of alignment a little bit, and that can cause pressure into your hips and into the nerves. So my joke with this is always that the more money you make, the more likely you are to get sciatica, because if you carry that wallet in your back pocket, then it's going to throw off your hips a little bit. And the other thing I want to talk to you guys about today is that you want to take care of your health now, because if you don't, you're going to be forced to take care of it later. So I have a lot of experience working in nursing homes, and one of the things I see a lot is basically lower leg weakness, and that's what leads people into these nursing homes. So if you take some of these examples that I show you today, put them into your life, it's going to help you a lot with your independence later on. All right, so now we're going to go into stretching versus strengthening. So stretching is going to make your muscles limber, and strengthening is going to help with that joint stability. Stretching you want to do every day. Hold 30 seconds, about 2 times if you can. Should feel like a gentle pull, and it's going to help you increase your range of motion and your flexibility. The reason why it's so important is because if you don't have good flexibility in your joint, it's easy to have a small injury turn into a big injury. What I mean by that is, like, there was a time whenever I was at an apartment, the floor was kind of wet and I slipped, but because my hips were very flexible, I was able to like just glide a little bit and come back. And sure, it hurt for a few days, but it didn't turn into a tear or a pull because I had that flexibility to go in that direction where I was slipping into. So being flexible can help save a lot of time in terms of healing. Strengthening, on the other hand, you want to do every other day just so the muscles can rest. You want to do it 2 sets of 10, or if it's kind of hard for you to do, just break it down into 4 sets of 5 reps. Rest between sets, and that's going to increase that joint stability so that this ball and socket doesn't move around way too much, and then that way you don't feel too much pain. The big tip I have here is that whenever you do stretch, make sure you use a firm material and not a rubber band. All right, so now we're going to go into stretching your hips. Feel free to do these stretches with me. I'm going to sit in the chair over here, and I'm going to try to give you modifications if you need them. If you can, try your best to do these, and if you can't do them, just keep trying, and then eventually you'll get that flexibility. So here we go. We're going to get into position here for stretch number 1. All right, guys, so the first stretch, I call it the knee push down stretch. So what I like to tell people to do is when you're in a meeting or something, you can knock out this stretch. What you're going to do is just cross one leg on top of the other, and while you're watching this video, feel free to follow along. You're going to put your hand right on top of your knee. You're going to keep your back as straight as possible, and you're going to press down and feel a stretch maybe in the front of your leg or maybe behind your leg where your hip is, holding that for 30 seconds and then relaxing really slow. Then we're going to do the other side, and what I want you to do is compare and see if one side is tighter than the other. So you're going to just push straight down, feel that stretch for about 30 seconds. Even if you can do these stretches about 10 seconds to 15 seconds, it will still help you a lot. So feel that stretch. If you feel like one side is tighter than the other, you can always feel free to do that stretch again. All right, so now we're going to talk about the knee crossover stretch. So basically, you're just going to have your knee in position that you did before, and then you're going to grab your knee, you're going to stretch it towards the opposite shoulder. So it's like you're hugging your knee, you're going to pull. You should feel a stretch on the back of the leg here. Hold for about 30 seconds. Like I said, if you If you can only do it for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, you're still going to benefit from it. Then you're going to switch over and you're going to do the other side. So you're just going to grab, pull the best you can, feel that stretch on the back of the hip, hold that for 10 to 15 seconds, preferably 30 seconds, and then relax really slow. The next stretch we're going to do is called the hamstring stretch. And you may have seen some of these videos where I have you do it with a strap or at a wall or something, but today we're going to do it in a chair. So you're going to put your foot on the floor. You're going to sit on the edge of your chair. If your chair has wheels, always push it to the back of a wall. That way you don't have any risk of that chair slipping out from behind you. So your heel is going to be on the floor. You're going to pull your toe towards your nose. You're going to gently push down on the front of your knee above the kneecap and get that stretch in the back of the leg. Hold that again 10 to 30 seconds and then relax real slow. And then do that same thing with the other leg. So put that heel on the ground, point your toe towards your hip, very gentle stretch on the back of the leg. You might feel it in the calf as well. Holding that for 30 seconds if possible and relax real slow. So the next stretch I'm going to show you is a quad stretch. It's the front of the leg that actually meets into the top of the hip and also in the front of the knee. For this one I'm going to stand up and show you what I would do here. So what I would do if I have really tight quads is I'd go to a kitchen counter, get a chair, and then put my leg up on the chair like so, and then reach back with lean back with my back and feel this stretch. Because I stretch my hamstrings quite often, because I stretch my quads quite often, I tend to need a little bit more stretch, and you might too. So in that case, what you can do is turn your chair, still holding on to something here. I'm going to do this leg here. Bring it right on top. Going to move this guy a little bit. And then I will do the stretch here, and I should feel a nice stretch on the front of the leg. If I don't have any of these things to help me, what I would do instead is I would just basically grab my leg like this, and then maybe hold on to something and get that stretch. One thing I want to let you know is that if you grab it from here, from the ankle joint, you're going to be better off than if you grab it from your foot over here, because you don't want to stretch your ankle too much, because that can make your joint a little bit more wobbly. And then finally, I'm going to show you a picture of the butterfly hip abductor stretch. And as you can see on the screen, all you have to do is put your feet together like a butterfly and then gently press down and open up the fronts of the hips. If you feel like you're not getting much of a stretch, then just go ahead and lean in a little bit and get that stretch that way. So those are the stretches. And I want to go back to a slide here about fascia. So fascia is something I'm really fascinated about. Fascia sits between the skin and the muscle, and it's kind of like intertwined. And if that tissue isn't sitting the right way, it can cause lots of pain and discomfort. So it's important to do your stretches in order to keep that fascia nice and limber. There's a big bunch of fascia that sits at the low back, and if that fascia is tight, it will affect your hips. And as you can see in the picture, the muscles that are attached to the back of the hip are also attached to the back of the knee. So if you're having any pain with your knees, chances are that something's probably going on with your hips as well. So for all of you guys that did the stretches, nice work doing that. I bet you probably feel a little bit better by doing that for just the last 4 or 5 minutes. Now we're going to go into strengthening of the hip. I'm going to show you some movies, and what I'm going to point out are things you want to look for to make sure that you're doing these the right way. So these are just some basic movements for the hip. If you feel like they're too easy, you can always lay on your side that way, or your stomach, in order to have gravity fighting against you so you have that resistance. Alright, so one thing that I do want to make sure of is that when you're doing these hip stretches that you stand by something sturdy. So I like to have people stand by their kitchen sink. If you're making your coffee or something like that, you can knock out a few of these exercises. But I always want you to make sure you count your reps, because if you don't, you can get really sore pretty easy. Alright, so let's get into it. So the first stretch you want to do is basically just standing at a kitchen counter, and then you're going to keep your back as straight as possible and move outward, kind of like a windshield wiper. So here's a video of what this looks like. So imagine like a straight line from the center of your spine all the way down, and all you want to do is just lift up your leg and move outward sideways like a windshield wiper. All right, for the next stretch, what you want to do is you want to work the inward muscles of the hip. So you're going to stand. You have to make sure you have a big smile with this one or it doesn't count. And then you're going to just basically go inward with your hip. So here's a video of this. You're going to move your leg across. And you're going to move your leg across. And if you feel like it's too easy, again, you can lay on your side and do these exercises. Just you want to get that other leg out of the way by bending it and placing it on the mat or the floor. The next stretch is for the back of the hip. And what I want to let you know about this one is that sometimes people have too big of a range of motion. They want to lift too high, and then it turns into a low back thing where they're straining their back. So just remember with this one, you want to keep your back straight, you want to keep your core tight, and then you're going to move backwards with this. So here's a video of what this looks like. Keep your back as straight as possible and pivot only at the hip joint. You're trying to go for 2 sets of 10, and if it feels like it's a little challenging for you, do 4 sets of 5. Now here's another stretch that I like a lot. It's basically stretching it's basically strengthening the front of the hip. So what you're going to do is put your feet together, maybe about shoulder width apart. You're going to lift your leg up to parallel with the ground and then slowly bring it down. So here's a video of what this looks like. Remember that your back is straight. You're going to lift straight up and come back down. Straight up and come back down. The number one thing people do here the incorrect way is they tend to hunch over a little bit too much in the low back. All right, now we're going to go into some stuff that I really like to show people who really want to get their quads and their hamstrings stronger. So I call this the mini kitchen sink squat because all you need is that kitchen sink. So you're going to put your feet about shoulder width apart, and then you're going to squat down. Whenever you squat down, you want to make sure that your knees stay right above your ankles. I put that green line there so you can kind of see the line. You don't want your knees to go past your toes because over time that can really wear out the patellar tendon. The patellar tendon is right in front of, let me show you with this guy here. So the patellar tendon is right in front of the knee, and if this knee goes way too past the toe, it can really irritate that tissue and then it'll be angry at you. So that is what that is the mini squat, and here's a video of what that looks like. And if you need to hold on to something, it's totally okay. Also, if you want to go down just a little bit, maybe about 10 degrees, you're still going to benefit from it. What I would like you guys to do is, if you can, is progress to being able to do sit to stand. So in this case, all you're going to do is maybe put some pillows on a chair, and then you're going to stand up. And what you want to do is try to make sure that your heels don't move backwards when you do the motion. So just because I'm here with you to show you, I'm going to try to show you what most people do incorrectly. So I'm going to sit in this chair. And then what you want to think about when you do this is you want to push yourself up through your heels. So you're going to push yourself up like this, and then whenever you come down, you're just going to come down very slow. So one of the things people do wrong is they'll pull their knees back and then they'll take the step. And that's really going to irritate your knees long term. So I'm going to show you one more time what you want to do instead of what you don't want to do. So you're going to keep your legs both shoulder width apart, about 90 degrees apart from each, about a 90-degree bend I should say here. And then you're going to push straight up, dig your heels into the floor, and then you're going to sit down very slow. And if you're having a hard time doing this, don't get discouraged. This is a really hard exercise. Just get a lot of pillows, and then every week take a pillow out, and that should help you with it. Okay guys, so now we're going to talk about what I really like too, are hip isometrics. So isometrics are whenever you strengthen a joint without moving a joint. So it's really cool. So what you want to do is get a towel or a ball or like a ground ball or volleyball, put it between your knees, and then you're going to squeeze your knees inward, and you're going to fire all the muscles on the inside of your legs. Hold that for 5 seconds and do that about 10 times. You might feel yourself shaking a little bit. That's okay. That's kind of what you want to be doing. Whenever you do this exercise, you want to make sure that you're not necessarily like I think we need to do that again. All right, so now we're going to talk about hip isometrics. And hip isometrics are one of my favorites because you don't need really too much in terms of resistance. All you need is like a ground ball or volleyball, maybe even a towel. You're going to put the towel between your knees, and then you're going to squeeze, hold for 5 seconds, and do that 10 times. And that will strengthen the inside of the hips. Now, if you have a rubber band, you can put that rubber band around your hips, hold it kind of like this, and then pull out, and that'll strengthen the muscles on the inside. The other way to do that is to put your hands on the outside of your hips and then push out, hold for 5 seconds, and then relax real slow. That'll also give you a good bicep workout as well. So the other exercise I like to show people is working the hip joint itself. So instead of having the towel in between your knees, now it's going to be between your ankles. So it'll be down a little bit lower as you see in the picture. And you're going to press your heels inward towards each other, kind of like you're crossing them. But you're not crossing them because the towel is in that place. You want to hold that again 5 seconds and relax real slow. And what that's going to strengthen is a muscle really, really deep into the joint of my little friend, baby Argan. So now we're going to go into the end of the class here, practicing your balance. And I love to practice my balance any chance I get. And so when you practice your balance, again for safety, what you want to do is have something in front of you. That way you know that you're not going to fall. So you're going to just hold this position for about 30 seconds if you can. But if you have a hard time doing it, just start at 10 seconds, it's fine. So you're just going to hold your leg out like this. Try to hover. Hold 30 seconds. Try not to lock out the knee. And then if you get better and better at it, you can hold with your eyes closed. But just make sure you have something there for your safety. So if you can try to hold this for about 10 seconds with your eyes closed, you're just going to build up that endurance and that balance. So let's say you go to a festival or something. If you fall into a little bit of a hole, that ankle's not going to roll, that knee's going to be a little bit more secure, and the hip is going to be a lot stronger for it too. So just have a slight bend. Try not to lock out the knee when you do that. And finally, in closing, I just want to let you know that no pain, no gain can lead to long-term injuries. So you want to make sure that you play it safe, and remember that no pain is a gain. In closing, make sure that you stretch your hips before starting your day. That's what I do, because the mornings are your own, and then life happens, and then we have all sorts of excuses as to why we can't exercise, me included sometimes. Also know that you can use your kitchen sink for your hip exercises or your balance. Make sure you count your reps, because sometimes people, especially here at this place, because there's a lot of hard workers, they tend to get a little too carried away, maybe doing 100 of these exercises a day. Maybe they get a little bit of tendinitis. So make sure you count your reps, take breaks. Also make sure you rest between days. If you feel any sort of like pain, tingling, or numbness whenever you're doing these exercises, make sure you change positions. Somewhere along the line, a nerve is getting pinched. So we talked about this earlier in the class. Sometimes in the spine, the nerves that go into the leg are getting pinched up here. So you want to move out of those positions, because long-term numbness can lead to weakness. And then, as you know, weakness can lead to instability. And if you have any sort of pain, seek help. So chronic pain is a lot more challenging to treat than acute pain. And one thing I promise you is that I will always do my best to help you, no matter how long you've been in pain. So if I can help you, give us a call. All you need is a referral from your doctor, and we will see you at Argan Physical Therapy. Again, I just want to thank my friend Brian. He makes these videos look good. Tim Papinal, he's helped me so much with these pictures. And also I want to thank Dr. Poshis. She really helps out with making sure this wellness program works out really well. And if you want a PDF of these exercises, you can always go to the website that's listed in the PowerPoint. So finally, if you want the schedule for the classes, I would love to see you there, even if you did the class on the TMS system. And thank you again for all your support with these classes. And I hope to see you around the campus. Have a good rest of the day, and thanks for watching.